I've been through a herd of hurdles. I've been baked, I've been burned. I've been last in a line of turtles. I have taught and I have learned. You've been lied to, you've been spit on. Truth was mangled, hope was kicked. You got logs on both your shoulders. Trust a wound as yet unlicked. I'd like to buy me a roadhouse, but you know I can give it away. I like to buy me a roadhouse. If nothing better go my way. You see, I can fade, I can focus. I got dreams and I got balls. When the map blows out the window, I know how to walk through walls. I've been through I've been baked, I've been burned, I've been last in a line of tunnels. I've been taught and I have learned. I have taught and I have learned. I'd like to buy me the roadhouse, but you know I give it all away. I'd like to buy me a roadhouse. If nothing better come my way, I'd like to buy me a roadhouse. But you know I'd give it all away. I'd like to buy a roadhouse. Oh, if nothing better comes my way. Yes, so this is The Frightened Angel. Joel Maynard of Reidsville, North Carolina, put this double hot rail in there for me because the stock pickup that was in it was just a single coil, lipstick looking thing. It didn't have any output. And it also, the poles were not properly beneath the strings. This neck is a little skinny, and as such, their ability to amplify each of the strings was inconsistent. But anyways, everything Joel Maynard has done for me over the last 15 or 20 years here in central North Carolina on a number of guitars has been fabulous. He's got my Telecaster right now, so I'm actually using this as, you know, my second favorite electric guitar. And of course, this one's real nice for slide. The skinnier neck for me is good because, especially with where I've gotten my nails, and that thumbnail there is kind of like a, you know, I had to cut about a 1/4 inch off it the other day because it was really almost getting in the way. It was getting so big and toothy, you know. That song, I'd Like to Buy Me a Roadhouse, is from June 6, 1995. At which time I was living on Highland Street in Worcester, Massachusetts. And was really quite well along with what had been at that point, probably about a 7 or 8 year deep dive into the acoustic Delta blues. And I didn't start with Robert Johnson, actually. I started with Lightnin' Hopkins and Son House, and then Sleepy John Estes, who was the devil's son-in-law? I forget. I think he was supposed to be like a child of Robert Johnson, but he had a cool couple of songs on his CD. It's over there. And I hadn't yet heard Roy Buchanan or Danny Gatton, who really pull from that tradition. And I was playing this Fender guitar over here at the time in a band. I guess it was a band that had about 9 players in it. At any given moment, there were probably 4 of us, at minimum 4 of us. But this, which I've cleaned up a whole lot, and I had this battery thing put in it because the original one you had to fuss around in here to get the battery, and it was forever slipping out of my hands, and then the wires would get screwed up and shit. And also my friend Jim Eanes, I realized at one point that it eats battery when it's plugged in, even if you got the volume all the way down and stuff. So I had my friend Jim watch this light, put a kill switch in it. So between songs I can cut it off if I get kind of wordy like I'm doing right now. But I love this guitar. I've only recently cleaned up the face of it. This guitar's name is Bucky, and I used to have a picture of my favorite Little Rascals character, Buckwheat, right there, because Buckwheat was a source of incredible wisdom, and in the face of, you know, a real hard time to be that color and respected, particularly if you were a kid. And he was the best. He had some of the funniest lines and the deepest lines. It had some other stuff on it. But anyways, it cleaned up real good with this Goo Gone product. And it survived. Look at that beautiful wood. It's great. Skinny. Kind of got this contour going on. It's real lightweight. And the neck is essentially, I don't know, it feels like a telly neck, but the headstock sort of has that Strat headstock, I don't know, like more Art Deco-y, because the Telecaster headstock is a bit smaller without so much dramatic curviness to it. But this is a lovely, lovely instrument. I guess I'd call this now my 3rd favorite electric guitar. It's great. The original plug jack was here, but it was just like a tiny washer and a couple of little nuts on a threaded thing that it kept just the movement of the cord eventually broke the whole thing open into a hole, and it was catastrophic. But and then, you know, Joel went and just said, "Now we'll put one right here through the big fat piece of wood that's inside the guitar, and that won't be happening anymore," which was smart. And plus, my strap never falls off anymore too, so that's all good. Yeah, so I'm talking about Reedsville. I'm talking about this song, and I'm talking about, you know, that song is almost 30 years old. But it's kind of relevant right now because, you know, about 2 weeks ago, I stopped drinking beer every day, and or alcohol in general. I've never been a hard liquor drinker since I got out of the Navy. But it's been a thing, and it's been a problem, and it's caused a lot of grief to people that I care about. And so it's kind of interesting to go back and sing a song about wanting to buy a roadhouse. And of course, I wrote that, oh, I don't know, 5 months before I met my wife, Tina. I'd been divorced a couple years at that point, after a first go at that institution. And I was drinking an enormous amount of beer at that time in my life. It was not at all uncommon for me to pack away 12 draft beers plus, in just a few hours if we were out playing, or if I was even more if friends were playing and I just got to listen because I didn't have nothing else to do with my hands. But you know something, I'd still like to have a roadhouse. I'd love to have a place where I could support, you know, interesting musicians and singers, and particularly songwriters, that just nobody's ever heard of, but who are real amazing in their way, and treat them respectfully. You know, it'd be really cool to have a place where I could ensure that everybody always got $100 to play to play for an hour or two. And I mean, it's 2022, and I'm not making a dime more playing live music than I did in 1998. Nope. That myth of the exposure gig leading to fame and fortune is bullshit. Good God, if that were true, I'd be living quite large right now, which is not to say that I'm complaining about my situation. It's nice to be retired, collecting Social Security. God knows I paid into it since 1973. And also, having survived about 25 years as a public school teacher, I have the additional blessing, and it most certainly is a blessing, of a pension for having made that commitment and done that in a way that never got me in any trouble. But it's really humbling and interesting in hindsight. Printed this shirt at Matt Lincoln's The Screen Printing Company, which used to be in Norwood, Massachusetts, right after I got out of the Navy. Maximum Love Vibes, I must add, was the band that me and my dear friend from high school, Mark McGee, back in Liverpool, New York, that was our recording group, and we did 5 albums together in the early 90s, right after I got out of the Navy. More on Max Love Vibes some other time. But at any rate, it's really interesting here, having not gotten hammered every night. Not like vomit hammered or fallen down or even stumbling or woozy hammered, but certainly hammered enough to become a little emotionally dysregulated. Because that always happens to everybody who drinks. They become emotionally dysregulated. Their filters become more permeable. talking about myself, of course, and everybody else who drinks all the time, like every day. The functional alcoholic is a very broad spectrum, but in every instance, the person drinks 5 or more days a week, and they work, and they go to church, and sometimes they get elected to public office, and some of them are firefighters and cops and teachers and preachers, small business owners, HR managers, disgraced city managers. That's an inside joke. All that, you know? So anyways, it's interesting to look back over, I'm 63. I was born in 1959. True child of the 60s right here. Child. And, since 1972, I've been drinking beer at least. Three nights a week. Until I got to high school, and then it got more. And sometimes it actually got way more. And I know that my first marriage fell apart because of this sort of happy, functional, alcoholic pact that we had, that we deserve this because we're working so hard, that kind of thing. Yeah. But I'd still like to have a roadhouse someday. It'd be really fun. I drive past some nasty cinder block, long abandoned gas station from the 40s or 50s beside some 2-lane blacktop. And I am filled with ideas about how that thing could be cheaply rehabilitated into basically a covered patio with grounded outlets. And, a place to sell beers for people who like them. Have other stuff, soda, water. Certainly provide something to eat. And, somebody rolls up on a night and says, hey, I'm a songwriter. Can I play here tonight? Yeah. I can give you $100. And I can give you 3 beverages for free. So that you don't say, and all the beer you can drink. That's a bad idea. Of course, if a person wants to spend their own money on the 4th and consecutive beers, that could be a choice they will make. But I don't think that anybody should be thirsty when they're playing music and singing. It'd be fun. Yep. So I'd like to buy me a roadhouse. The chords on this song have not changed since 1995. A lot of songs that I wrote a long time ago, when I was kind of coming out of a progressive rock electric guitar place, that I was in during most of the 80s. Go back and listen to some of the hip bone instrumentals, and some of the 4-track stuff that I was doing when I lived overseas. It's pretty deep and complex and frankly kind of scary. But I was coming out of that, the kid that was in school band. I know how to do time signatures that are, odd number time signatures, and I know how to do a minor chord instead of a major chord. Like, wow, that's a surprise. All this corny shit that happens in pop music that's clever, But when I moved into New England, I started meeting people that were playing pretty simple music. And I don't mean simple-headed music. I mean music that just about anybody could sit right in there and do something that didn't compete with it. And that was good. And the context that a lot of that was going on, for me anyways, was an invitation by Bob Jordan to participate in a group that had already been around for a while of improvisers that was called the ITQ, the Invented Thing Quartet. And three of us played homemade instruments of our own invention. Ken Doan was one of them, and Mitch Ahern was another. Mitch still plays, I think he's still playing the Harrow, an amplified agricultural blade with neck and electronics. He had it then, or an earlier incarnation of it. Ken played a strung amplified tennis racket that he called the 40 Love. And I can't remember the other one, but it was really cool looking. Marshall Brooks played tabla, percussion and tabla mostly. Bob played his 12-string Portuguese guitarra. He had two of those at that time. They were beautiful. All the tuners were out, sticking out of the end of it like this, kind of like petals on the end of a flower. And he could play the hell out of that thing. It had a real short neck on it. And we did all kinds of stuff. It was really fun. Didn't last that long, but it was a blast. I remember a live thing we did on the Clark University radio station, WCUW. Like 3 improvs into it. Well, they weren't really improvs. We just did these mashups of songs, and sometimes it would just go off into, you know, Sun Ra land. But we did Louie Louie, you know, the old Kingsman tune, and we mutilated it. It was so cacophonous, and a lot of shouting and this show, you know, there was a phone in there. And when we got done, somebody called up and they hated the version that we did. They thought that we had, you know, just done something that was blasphemous. And they were very mad about it, and they said, you shouldn't play it like that ever again. And Bob Jordan said, okay. So we traded instruments with one another and then played it again. Not the way we previously had, because we changed instruments. You know, and this is just another example of the things that a guest can do to a radio station that loses them. One donor. Oh my God. I think all of us are still alive from that group. I know Mitch and Bob are. Pretty sure Ken is. And I don't know whatever happened to Marshall. He just always seemed to be like this sort of Buddha that, you know, self-rowing canoe that just goes right through the turbulence. Oh boy. I'll have to tell folks, you know, more about Worcester. There's hundreds of Worcester stories that I could tell you involving Steve Blake's Toad Hall studio, Bob Jordan's living room, the Middle East restaurant stage in Cambridge, Hipbone and its predecessors, actually what led up to Hipbone. I guess that would be the story of Bret and Pete. That needs to happen. And my numerous failed efforts to get something happening in Fitchburg, Massachusetts before I went to Worcester, and my failed efforts at auditioning for a number of Boston bands before that. because failure is the only vehicle for learning. Sometimes failure is the only feedback you get. And so those will be fun to talk about. It'll be fun to talk about my years of the Fostex X15 multi-tracking cassette recorder, which I obtained my first one in 1983 in Monterey, California, and was using that one or a subsequent iteration of it right up until maybe 10 years ago. But the 80s were not much bands. Well, from 82 on, not much bands, except for a Portuguese surf band in Monterey. That was pretty cool. And when I met Jerry Ford, this guy from Oklahoma that lived in Monterey and knew the mothers of invention. There's another guy I can talk about. He's a trip. And of course, the bands Durats and Moonmen and my pretty extensive improvised duet series from the aughts, started around 2000 and ran about 7 years. All kinds of improvised duets with a host of people. And appearances on compilation albums, tribute versions of Iggy Pop, Alice Cooper, 50s instrumental tunes, The Residents, Devo, like that. And it'll be fun to talk about radio stations at some point, playing live on radio stations. It'll also be fun to talk about being one's own record label and occupying a place somewhere between, the bargain basement madness of Eugene Chadbourne. It's a very brilliant model he has. Sell anything, okay? And that involves his music. It works. I don't suppose he ever lacks for a cheeseburger when he wants one with that model. Up to maybe, some of the stuff that was going on in the 90s on the Pacific Northwest, these cassette slash vinyl, a lot of 10 inches coming out back then and stuff. My labels were in there. They were as good as finances permitted and in extremely small runs, with a very high concept and visual aesthetic, and usually fairly voluminous information about the people that were playing on there and stuff like that. I do remember one failure in that case, which I'll bring up some other time. My bad. But anyways, this is an introduction to where credit is due. Because I don't like to name drop people who were problematic or to whom I still owe an apology. But I really like to name drop people when I'm saying thank you to them. And, just with getting old and stuff, the likelihood of me seeing a lot of these folks ever again, like face to face, is not good. It's real unlikely, in fact. There are people within a half hour here that I haven't been able to seem to make that happen with for a decade. And I don't know how many decades I got left. So I decided to do Where Credit Is Due as a series of videos that I'm going to start them off with a tune. I'm going to let something I wrote be the springboard for a way to thank people, and give them a shout out, and maybe say something descriptive and perhaps hopefully authentic and real, about what makes those musicians and creative people that I have encountered over these, since since I started taking piano lessons in 1966. I suppose it should all start with who was your first musical interaction, and that's just about where it was outside of family, was piano lessons. That's a whole other damn thing. But I hope you dig these videos. I've met so many and played with and collaborated with and tried to create, and in a couple of instances created music scenes that were fruitful for other people. Because I met people that were fearless enough to do something really well, without any assurance that it was going to help you pay your bills. And I think that people like that, their names aren't mentioned often enough. So anyways, this was the very first one, and if you like it, hit like. I've never said this before in anything I did, I don't think. Hitting like, I guess, matters. I don't know yet, because nobody listens to this channel much. Except for some of the people that might be mentioned in it, and that's a closed system. But if you hit the subscribe button or the notification button, who knows, right? Like if this was fun, cool, if this made you think of some people that you might like to get in touch with, that we know in common, 1 degree of separation, that kind of shit, consider checking out the next one. And if you like that one, check out the one after that. And if at some point I say or do something that makes you really pissed off and you're like, this guy's a dick, well then turn off the subscription and the notifications and don't watch them no more. Let's be empirical. But anyways, thank you so much. All those people that have been helpful over the years, I love you. I want to be able to live long enough to say thanks and give you all you guys shout outs and stuff without seeming like I'm trying to sell something, because I'm not. It's been really fun, and I'm happy that I can still be doing this stuff, despite all. Anyways, happy trails.